This is J. Krishnamurti's discussion with students in San Diego, California, 1970.
What shall we talk over together this morning? This is supposed to be a discussion, and I think the word discussion is not right. It's more a dialogue, exchange, not of opinions, because that will lead us nowhere, or indulging in mere intellectual cleverness will have very little meaning. Because truth is not to be found through exchange of opinions or of ideas. So, if we are to talk over together any problem, it must be on the level which is not intellectual or emotional or sentimental, but problems that are really affect one in one's daily living. And from there, go into it. Yes, sir.
I live in conflict with myself. I'm a vegetarian and raw food. I don't kill. But to solve the problem that communism takes not over, I think this war against communism is, in a certain sense of self-protection, justified. I would like to find out with you if I'm right or wrong.
The gentleman says that he's a vegetarian, doesn't kill, and the fight against communism is self-protective response. Is that it, sir?
Yes,
Beg pardon?
You must understand, I lived 10 years under communism. I was in a Russian concentration camp and I was in a communist prison, you know. And so they understand only one language and it is power.
So what is the question, sir?
The question is this war self-protection or not?
I believe every war, every group that lead to war, the politicians that bring about wars, they always say, don't they, that is self-protective war. Is that what you want to really discuss?
Sir?
Wars have always been, whether they are offensive or defensive, but they are wars. Killing each other has been a kind of peculiar, monstrous game throughout the centuries. And we are still, unfortunately, those so-called educated, cultured, still indulging in the most savage form of butchery. Could we go into the question of, if that is what interests you, some of you, what is deep violence, this aggression in man, and whether it is at all possible to be free of it? Could we discuss that? Do you really want to go into it? No. So, you know, there have been groups who have said that they will under no circumstances express violence, live a peaceful life surrounded by people who are very aggressive, violent, a kind of nucleus amongst people who are savage, brutal, violent. And if one has observed, and if you'll forgive me talking about it a little bit about myself, I don't read books. I don't read, the speaker doesn't read the Gita, the Upanishads, the Bible, all the philosophy and all that. But I think what is important is if we could go into this deeply, into this question of aggression and violence, then perhaps it would be worthwhile and see how far the mind can be absolutely be rid of this. Could we go into it? Because you see, I feel very strongly that there is no love in any form if there is any spark or touch of violence in the mind. And how does the mind free itself of its accumulated violence, cultured violence, self-protective violence, the violence of aggression, the violence of competition, the violence of trying to be somebody, the violence of trying to discipline oneself according to a pattern. Please follow all this. Trying to become somebody, trying to suppress, trying to bully oneself, brutalize oneself in order to be. All such forms of violence. Killing animals, killing the neighbor, killing the, So, there are so many different kinds of violence. Shall we go into each violence, or shall we take the whole structure of violence? Not bit by bit. Can you look at the whole spectrum of violence? Not one part of it.
May I ask you the source?
May
I ask you what you feel is the source of violence?
What is the source of violence? The source of violence is the me, the ego, the self, which expresses itself in so many ways, in division, in trying to become or be somebody, in dividing the me and the not me, the me that divides itself as the unconscious and the conscious, the me that identifies with the family and not the family, the community and not the community, and so on and on. It's like a drop of a stone in a lake. The waves spread, 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 but the center is the me. And as long as that in any form survives, very subtly or grossly, there must be violence. No, you see, you asked a question, what is the root cause of violence? But that is a question which, by trying to find out what the cause is, we think we will be rid of it. So shall we tackle that first thing? By thinking or inquiring into the cause of violence, we think we shall be able to get rid of it. Don't we? I say to myself, if I know why I am brutal, I'll have finished with brutality. And I spend weeks and months and years searching for the cause, or reading the explanations given by experts, specialists, of the various causes of violence or aggression. But at the end of the volume, whether it's small volume or 10 volumes, I am still violent. Right? So, do we inquire into this question of violence through the discovery of the cause and the effect, or take the cause, the effect, and take the whole of it and look at it? Because the cause becomes the effect, and the effect becomes the cause. It's a chain process, isn't it? I don't know if you... There is no cause and effect so markedly different. It's a chain, a cause becoming the effect, and the effect becoming the cause. And we can go along this process indefinitely. But whereas, if we could, I suggest, if we could look at this whole problem of violence in man and see how to resolve it, how to end it, how to comprehend it so vitally that you come to an end. Could we do that? The me and the not me, is it the effect of the culture, the society in which we live, or is it innate? Or is it born with us? Again, can you divide the culture from yourself and yourself from the society? Are they both the same, interrelated? The me, my greed, my problems, my desires, my anxieties, my fears, my hopes, my anguishing fulfillments and despairs, deep sorrows, are also the product of my neighbor, of the community I live in. They're both interrelated. I cannot separate it and say this is me and that is society. Once the separation has taken place, as in case of most people, then this me becomes more self-centered, more active, more divisive, and so on. So again we come to the question, can we take violence as a whole, including the me, which is the origin of violence, and the society in which we live is the origin of violence? Can we do that? Not separate it. We have built a society which is violent, and we as human beings are violent, and so the environment in which we live, the culture in which we live, is the product of our endeavor, is the product of our struggle, of our pain, of our appalling brutalities. For me, the most important thing is it possible to end, can one end this tremendous violence in one? That is really the question. Shall we do that? Can we discuss that? So let's go back to the cause again at the end of it.
Is it possible to transform violence, not to eliminate it or end it in the sense that you just mentioned?
Is it possible to transform it, not end it? We're going to find out. Because, look, violence is a form of energy. And that energy, utilized in a certain way, becomes aggression. So we're not trying to transform or change, but understand it, comprehend it so fully that one is free of it. The mind is gone beyond it. Whether it is transcended it or transformed it and ended, that's irrelevant. Those are verbal means of communication. So, can we discuss this? Is it possible? Not possible. It is possible. These words. To inquire together into this question of violence and going beyond it. Shall we do this, sir? Yes, sir.
If our actions, which you say would be effect, is an act of violence, then this is a question. Then the cause is violence in us, which the action is an expression of. Now, we're violent, and the me is violent. So, what is that doing for the me? For me to be violent? What is that thing that's being expressed when I am violent?
I see what you mean, sir. Is this what you mean? And please correct it. The me is, we said, the center of violence. How does that me come into being, which then protects itself in order to survive, and in the protection of itself, in the security of itself, it must bring about violence. So you're asking, how does this me come about? Which is the very center of aggression. And aggression is the effect of the me who is separating itself from the you, and therefore resisting you, and therefore becoming aggressive. So you're asking, are you not, sir, how does the me come into being? And if that is the cause of all violence in humanity, then the very transformation of the me will end all violence. That's what we are trying to find out. To inquire into the ending or drying up the source of aggression. Now let's proceed, sir. Let's get going, otherwise we can go on verbalization forever. Now, how do we grapple with this question? Abstractly or directly realizing that human beings are violent? How do you think about violence? How do you look at violence? Do you look at violence in another or violence in yourself? Please do watch it. Please listen to the question. How do you know you are violent? Conflict is violence. And when there is conflict, or is one aware that one is violent? How do you know violence? This is really a complex question, knowing. Look, sir, when I say I know you, what does that mean? I know. I know you as you were yesterday when I met you, or 10 years ago when I met you. But between 10 years ago and now, you might have changed and I might have changed. Therefore, I don't know you. I know you only 10 years ago or 10 days ago. Therefore, I can never say I know you. Do please understand this simple thing first. Therefore, I can never say, I can always say I have been violent, but I don't know what violence now is. You understand what I'm talking? Are we? So how do you know violence? When you say I'm violent, I'm angry, I hate somebody. I hope you don't, but when you say these things, what do you mean by it? Look, sir, I am angry. You say something to me which irritates my nerves and all the rest of the organical process, and I am angry. Now, and then I say, afterwards, a second later, I said, by Joe, I've been angry. At the moment of anger, I don't recognize it. Only later I recognize it. Now, the recognition, you have to examine the structure of recognition. Because if you don't understand the structure of recognition, you won't be able to meet anger afresh. I don't know if you... Look, I'm angry. And I realize I'm angry a moment later. The realization is the recognition I have been angry. The recognition takes place when I have been angry before. Otherwise, I don't know it's anger. So when I recognize it only because I have known it before. See what has happened. The past interferes with the present. And then I say I'm angry. So I'm always translating the present reaction in terms of the past. So can I, without translating the present response with the past, can I look at the response anew? You understand? With a fresh mind. Are we meeting each other? No, please do it. Look, you call me a fool. And my whole blood, everything comes to the surface and says, you are another. And what has taken place in me, emotionally, inwardly? I have an image about myself. And that image says, I am not a fool. I have made that image into something which I think is desirable, noble, worthwhile, and you are insulting that image. And that image responds, which is the old. Are you following? And so the old responds. So the next question is, can the response not be related to the old? Therefore, an interval between the old and the new response. Can the old be dormant, be hesitant, so as to allow the new to take place? You understand? I think that's where the whole problem is.
Are you saying then that violence, the root of violence, all violence is just confusing what isn't with what is?
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. Look, let's begin again. We are violent. Throughout man's existence, human beings have been violent and are violent. I want to find out as a human being how to transcend this violence, how to go beyond it. What am I to do? Because I see what violence has done in the world, how it has destroyed every form of friendship, every form of relationship, how it has brought deep agony in oneself, misery. I see all that. And I say to myself, now, I want to live really a peaceful, a life in which there is deep abundance of love. And the violence must disappear or must go, etc. Now, what am I to do? First, I mustn't escape from it. Right? Let's be sure of that. I must not escape from the fact I am violent. Escaping being, condemning it. Right? Justifying it. Or even naming that I am violent. You following? Because the naming is a form of condemnation. Is a form of justification. So, first I have to realize the mind must not be distracted from this fact of violence. either in seeking the cause or in the explanation of the cause, or naming the fact that I am violent, or justifying it, condemning it, trying to get rid of it. Those are all forms of distraction from the fact of violence, right? This is clear, is it? So the mind must be absolutely clear that there is no escape from it. Not the exercise of will which says, I will conquer it. Because will is the very essence of violence. I don't know if you're...
Are we to find some order in it? Order in the violence?
What's that?
Order in why we have violence?
Are we trying to bring order into violence? Is that it?
Well, basically, are we trying to find what violence is by finding the order in it or the order in ourselves?
No, sir. No, sir. How can there be order in violence? Violence is disorder. No, do please go with me a little bit. First, no escape from it, of any kind. Intellectual, explanatory, justification. See the difficulty of this. Because our mind is so cunning, so sharp to escape. Because it doesn't know what to do with it. It is not capable of dealing with it. Or it thinks it is not capable. Therefore, it escapes. Look, sir, most of us know what loneliness is, don't we? Don't you? Being lonely. And being lonely, not knowing what to do with it, being afraid of it, we move away from it, right? We escape from it. Or try to fill that emptiness by knowledge, by all kinds of things. All those are distractions from the fact of loneliness. Right? And therefore, it is still there. So what one has to realize first is not to escape. Realize that every form of escape, distraction, a movement away, only sustains violence. So my mind, the mind then is confronted with the fact, with what is and nothing else. Right? Are we doing this, please? This is a discussion, not a talk by me.
The thought of loneliness itself an escape? If you say it and I hear it, and I say to myself, I am lonely, I immediately feel that I have escaped in saying that.
Of course, you have escaped when you say, I am lonely. You know the fact of loneliness. You know what it means. Don't you? Look, sir, it's so simple. Look, sir, when you look at a tree, do watch it. When you look at a tree, if you say, what a beautiful tree that is, your mind is already gone away from observing the tree, isn't it? No? So, to look at the tree is not to say it's a beautiful tree. Therefore, your attention is completely in looking. Right? So when you say, what a beautiful river that is, what a lovely view that is, you're already gone. Yes, sir. Yes. So behind you, sir. Behind. We're going to find out, sir. You do it, sir. Do it. And you will have answered it yourself. When you name it, you are relating it, the name, to the past. Therefore, you are looking at it with the eyes that have been touched by the past. Therefore, you are not looking at it afresh. That's all. You get the point? You look at, please do listen to this, you look at violence with eyes that have condemned, that are conditioned, that are justifying, that say violence is necessary to live in this monstrous society. Violence is part of nature, look, nature kills, and so on. You follow? With the eyes that are conditioned to look with condemnation or justification or resistance. What we are saying is to look at it afresh and new. And you can only do that when you become aware that you are identifying what you see with what you already know. And therefore, not looking at it afresh, right? Just get this point, please. Just a minute, sir. Your turn will come. Just a minute, sir. Look, sir. I look at my wife or my husband. I'm not married. I look at my wife or my husband. Do I ever really look at her or him? Or do I look at her with the image that I have so carefully built for 30, 40, 50 years, or 10 days? And she does the same with me. And therefore, our relationship is between the images and not actual relationship. You following this? Do you? If you do, then break the image. So the question then arises, how does this image, how is the image formed? What is the mechanism that forms images?
Time.
Huh?
There's a space between your perception and your response. That would be time, I think.
Yes, sir. Do look. That's right. But go into it a little more. You will see it. My wife says to me, "You're an ass." I don't like it. And that has left a mark on my mind. You do this, sir. You left a mark on my mind. And she says something else that also leaves a mark on my mind. So these marks are the images. Now, when she says to me, I'm a fool, if I am aware at that minute, instead of aware, give attention, then there is no marking at all. You follow it? Because she may be right. Therefore, I'm attentive, watching. So, inattention breeds images. Attention frees the mind from the image. You heard this? You understand? This is very simple. In the same way, when I am angry, to be completely attentive, Not let inattention come in, which is to allow the past to come and interfere with the actual perception of anger at the moment. Got it? No, we said that. Is that not an act of will? We said will is in essence violence. You know what? Let's examine what will is. What is will? I want to do that. I won't have that. I shall do that. I have resisted. I demand. If will, desire, which is what? Which is a form of resistance, isn't it? When you say, I will that, it's a form of resistance. And resistance is violence. Yes, sir.
Can you suggest a way of going about answering the questions which you raise? I refer to number one, your comments that it is better to be aware than to rationalize. Perhaps I'm paraphrasing you wrong, but as soon as you use words to rationalize and try to determine an answer, you're defeating your own attempts to arrive at an answer to the questions that you raise.
I don't quite follow, sir.
I'm asking possibly if there's some nonverbal internal communication that you're referring to in order to answer some of the questions that you ask.
I don't quite understand. Wait a minute, sir. Let him. Yes.
What he's saying is there, if I may say so.
Go right ahead. I hope so. I hope you can describe it better than I.
What you're saying, there's the what is, and then there's the response to the what is, which is the memory. Now he's saying, is there something else besides the memory of the past in which he calls a nonverbal communication of knowing? Is there another way of knowing other than meeting with the past? That's sort of, is there another communication, another?
Well,
Are you trying to say, sir, is there a
what,
communion which is non-verbal?
I guess what I'm really trying to say is that you're trying to talk to something that's in the essence within a person, within each one of us.
No, sir, I'm not. I don't know.
Maybe I'm.
Sir, do let.
Describe that which is indescribable. Is that not it?
No, sir, don't let's go off, please. I'm trying to look. We're trying to find out whether violence can end. That's all. Don't let's go off to something else. May I take my coat off?
Can I try that question another way? I follow you when you say that we avoid the problem often by seeking an answer.
That's right, sir.
That gets us away from the what is.
That's right, sir.
And in your writings you said the answer is in the problem.
That's right, sir. Now I want to know how to look at that what is.
Okay. Then how do I know the answer when I found the answer? What is the knowing process? Or do I only know what the answer was since
That's
thought
part of my
is old?
question.
What is the question,
How do
sir?
I know the answer? If I focus on my attention on a problem, whether it's violence or loneliness or whatever, how is it if I really pay attention to the problem, I say, that's the answer, or am I thinking then, and thought is old, so I only
Then
know
there
that
is
was
no
the
problem,
answer.
sir. No. Please don't waste your energy clapping. It's not worth it.
sir.
No, please, sir, do listen to this. You see, we are looking at life, living and everything with the eyes that have been so burdened with the past that our eyes never see anything new. Now, we are trying to find out what the transcending of violence. I am saying don't escape from it first. Verbally or non-verbally, don't move away from that central fact of violence. Then the next question is, how do you know it is violence? You understand? You only know it because you are able to recognize it because you have been violent. But when you look at it without naming, without justifying, condemning, which are all the conditioning of the past, then you are looking at it with fresh eyes, aren't you? Then is it violence? Oh, no, don't say no, sir. It's one of the most difficult things to do. Because all our living is the past. Do you know what it is to live in the present?
Why is it important to know?
Huh?
Why is it important to know?
Why is it important? Why do you ask that question? Why is it important?
Why are we trying to understand? Why do we want to lead a life of love?
Oh, why do you want to lead a life of love? I don't. I want to lead, not even I don't want to. I see violence and I see the misery it brings about to the mother, to the man, to human beings. And I ask myself, as a human being, can this end? And in inquiring into the question of ending, I find out what it is to live peacefully, that's all. Not that I want to end, which is another form of will, action of will. So, look, therefore, then the next question is, the mind is the result of the past, right? The mind recognizes violence, names it, and moves away from it. Now, when the mind doesn't name it, can the mind look at what it has called violence? Then is there such thing as violence? And to look, your mind must be extraordinarily free of the past, right? To look at my wife or my husband, the mind must be free of the image that it has built. The image being the past. To understand that. And to be aware at the moment of the insult or the flattery, to be aware at that moment. If the mind is not aware, it has already become inattentive and therefore building an image. This is clear, is it? Are you doing this?
You say free, be free of it. That includes a lot more. How far does that go? What would you define freedom? Would you go into that?
Would you go into freedom? What does it mean? We'll come to that, sir, presently. So, there are all the deep down angers, frustrations, resistances The mind must also be free of that, mustn't it? The mind can be free of active violence in the present. Right? Are you following this? I'm asking, can the mind be free of all the unconscious accumulations of hate, anger, bitterness, which are there deep down? How is this to be done?
Why is it to be done?
Huh?
Why is it to be done?
His gentleman says, why should it be done?
Why not? Well, why not too?
Oh, no, come off it. Why should it be done and why not? Then we end up in, it should be done because a man who wants to live at peace and to bring about a world that is peaceful must inquire into all this. Must, as a human being, see if he can be free from it. And that's what we are trying to do.
But if one sees this violence in oneself and outside of oneself, how does one keep from being depressed or disturbed by it?
Big one?
How does one keep, if one sees this violence in oneself and outside of oneself, how does one keep from being depressed or disturbed?
How does one keep
from being depressed or disturbed by this violence?
if one is clear and is free of this violence, you're asking, how can one be free of depression?
No, if one sees the violence.
About you. Ah, I see. If one is free of this violence in oneself, and when you see violence outside of you, doesn't it depress you? What are you to do? Is that it? What are you to do is to teach another. Sir, teaching another is the highest profession in the world. Not for money. Not for your big bank account. Just to teach, to tell another, look, you can live differently, for God's sake, look.
What is the easiest way to teach that?
What is the easiest way? Go to college. No. This is becoming a circus. So you teach another by teaching him and therefore learning yourself. In teaching him, you are learning. You understand? It isn't first you have learned, accumulated knowledge, then you inform, whereas you yourself are violent. Understanding yourself is to help another to understand it. And therefore, the teaching is the learning. So you don't see all the beauty of all this. Too bad. So let's go on. Look, sir, don't you want to know from your heart what love is? Don't you? No? He doesn't know. In the human cry, which has been for millennia, to find out how to live peacefully, how to have real abundance, compassion. And that can only come into being when there is no violence, when there is real sense of non-me. You understand? And that's what we are inquiring into. And we say, look, to find that out. Don't escape. Whether it's loneliness, whether it's anger, whether it's bitterness, look at it without any escape. The escape is the naming of it also. So when you are bitter, don't name it. Look at it. And then see if you don't name, does bitterness exist? You understand? Yes, sir.
Why is the animal who apparently has no name does not name? Why is he violent?
Why is the animal, which apparently doesn't name, why is it violent? Is the animal asking the question or the human being asking the question? I'm not being insulting, sir, but I'm asking. The animal is hungry. We are supposed to be intelligent and attack the animal to eat it for sport and all the rest of the ugly business. With our violent eyes, we look at the animal. So, sir, please, let's stick to... Yes, madam.
Excuse me. I'd like to ask two questions. We've established that there's violence in all of our lives, but what I'm waiting for is how do we get rid of this violence?
I'm showing it to you, madam. I'm showing it to you.
I'm missing the point then, I'm afraid. You mean merely by facing the fact that there is violence?
No, madam. It's much more complex than that.
And one more question. Do you advocate getting rid of all violence, or is some violence healthy in everyone's life? I don't mean physical violence. I mean getting rid of frustrations. Can this be helpful? Or are you trying to keep you from being frustrated and therefore...
No, madam. Look, the answer to the second question. Why are we frustrated? Have you ever asked yourself why you are frustrated? To answer that question, have you ever asked what is fulfillment? Why you want to fulfill? And is there such thing as fulfillment? Do please answer it. This is a discussion. Is there such thing as fulfillment? What is it that is fulfilling? The me? The me that's violent? The me that is separating? The me says, I'm bigger than you? The me that pursues ambition, fame, notoriety, what it will, and because it wants to achieve, therefore it's frustrated when it cannot achieve, and therefore becomes bitter. Therefore, is there such thing as fulfillment? Or only the me wanting to expand itself? And when it cannot expand, it feels frustrated and therefore bitter. And that bitterness, that desire to expand is violence. Now, when you see that, the truth of that, then there is no fulfillment at all. Therefore there is no frustration. Oh Lord. Yes, sir.
Plants and animals are both living things. They both try to survive. Do you draw a distinction between killing animals to eat and killing plants to eat? If so, why?
Personally, I've never eaten meat in all my life. One has to survive, I don't know why. So one kills the least thing that is a vegetable. right? And I believe some scientists are gradually coming to that point of view also. Then you will all accept it.
It seems to me the part of the past is the mental pattern of thinking. And all these questions are Aristotelian thinking, and you're using non-Aristotelian thinking, and that seems to be why there's such a gap. In other words, to look at something is to use a non-Aristotelian...
That's right, sir.
Well, then everyone here is talking Aristotelian and thinking Aristotelian. And you are using non-Aristotelian tactics, and therefore the gap is so complete, I'm amazed. And I suggest that we all get non-Aristotelian, and then we can commune very closely.
That's the difficulty, sir. I know this. That, just a minute, sir. Un moment. Just a minute, sir. Please look at it. That what the gentleman said was, you are used to one particular formula, particular series of languages with a certain meaning, and the speaker has not that particular view. So the difficulty lies in communication. And we went into that. We said, the word is not the thing. The description is not the described. The explanation is not the explained. And you keep on sticking to the explanation, holding on to the word. And that's where our difficulty is. So, we see what violence is in the world. It's part of fear, part of pleasure, part of this tremendous drive for excitement. And we want that, and therefore we encourage society to give that to us. And we blame the society. Whereas we are responsible for all this. And we are saying, asking ourselves, whether this violence, which is such terrific energy, can that energy be used differently, right? To be violent needs energy. Now, can that energy be transformed or moved in another direction? We're putting the same thing differently. Now, look, any form of resistance is a waste of energy, right? Because that breeds violence. Resisting one nation against another nation. One nation saying, I am better than you, and so on, resisting. The resistance between wife and husband, between resistance, you understand, is energy which breeds division and therefore violence. Now, understanding that, seeing the truth of that, that energy now becomes entirely different, doesn't it? No? Okay. I'm good. All right, that's good. How can one observe the total process, the totality of anything, without the division, without resistance, right? Have you ever observed totally anything? Anything, it doesn't matter what. an ant moving across the floor. Have you watched it? Totally? Or do you step on it? Or throw it out? Have you watched it very, very closely? I'm afraid you haven't. Have you ever watched a tree totally? Which means not saying how beautiful it is, or how ugly it is, or I wish I had it in my garden. Have you ever watched it totally? Have you ever watched the cloud with the light on it? Marvelous sight, completely. Or you've said, it's a lovely cloud, let's go and have tea. No, sir, do look at it. Have you ever watched your wife totally, or husband? No, sir. And therefore, if you watch totally, there is no resistance. It is this inattention that breeds resistance. Oh, come on, sir. And when you watch a person totally, you make the other person rather uncomfortable. I'm afraid you do, because they don't want you to look at him totally. But you can do it casually. So, please, sir, come back. You see, what we are discussing is really quite serious. I wish you would pay attention to it. You want to be entertained. I'm afraid I'm not the kind of person who wants to entertain.
So you're saying that nonviolence then is absolute, or this other thing, that violence in itself is an aberration of what could be.
Yes, if you want to put it that way. So look, what we are saying is, violence is a form of energy. And love is also a form of energy. Love without jealousy, without anxiety, without fear, without bitterness, without all the agony that goes with love. Now, violence is energy, love hedged about, surrounded, contained with jealousy, all that is another form of energy. Now, to transcend both, go beyond both, is also another energy. It is the same energy moving totally in a different direction and dimension, right? We are saying that, sir. No, we are saying, look, sir, non-Aristotelian language.
What I'm saying is love with jealousy is actually violence.
Of course it is.
So in other words, you had two energies. You had the violence.
It is the same energy, sir. Madam, laissez-moi...
At what stage and under what conditions is a certain individual to go into psychic practices and experiences, and to what extent, please?
What are you saying, madam? Huh? When should we have psychic experience? What has that to do with violence? Do please just listen. When should you have psychic experience? Never. Do you know what it means to have psychic experiences? To have the experience, extrasensory perceptive experience, you must be extraordinarily mature. You must be extraordinarily sensitive, and therefore extraordinarily intelligent. And if you are extraordinarily intelligent, you don't want psychic experiences. Sirs, do look. Give your heart to this, please, because human beings are destroying each other through violence. The husband is destroying the wife, and the wife is destroying the husband, though they sleep together, walk together. Each lives in isolation, with his own problems, with his own anxieties. And this isolation is violence. Now, when you see all this so clearly in front of you, see it, not just think about it. When you see the danger of it, you act, don't you? Look, when you see a dangerous animal, you act, don't you? There is no hesitation, there is no argument between you and the animal. You just act, you run away or do something. Here we are arguing. You don't see the tremendous danger of violence. You only see the end result of violence, which is the bomb. So if you actually with your heart see the nature of violence and see the danger of it, you're finished with it. But you see, now how can one point out the danger of it if you don't want to see it? Either Aristotelian, non-Aristotelian language won't help you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There have been groups, yes. Yes, sir, there have been groups. There have been groups in India, here and other places where living in a society which is violent, they said we will not be violent. But we're going much further than that. They may not have violence against the community, but they are violent in themselves. You don't see the point.
Sir, I feel that I see what you're saying, and I've tried that, of watching violence in myself without naming. The gentleman who asked the first question about having been in a concentration camp and being a vegetarian and how do we meet violence, I feel like, how do we meet violence in other people? Do we do it in the same way?
Yeah. How do you meet violence in other people? That's quite a difficult problem, isn't it? My neighbor is violent towards me. How shall I deal with him? Turn the other cheek? He's delighted. What shall I do? Would you ask that question? Do please, I'm asking this seriously. Would you ask that question if you are really non-violent, if there was no violence in you? No, do listen, sir. Please do listen to this question. If in your heart, in your mind, there is no violence at all, not a spot, no hate, no bitterness, no sense of fulfillment, no wanting to be famous, all, no violence at all. Would you ask that question, how you would meet the neighbor who is violent? Or you would know then what to do with your neighbor. Others may call what you do violent, but you may not be violent. You follow? You have no violence. And at the moment your neighbor acts violently, you will know how to deal with it. But the third person watching you might say, by Jove, you are also violent. But you know you are not violent. So what is important is to be for yourself completely without violence. And it doesn't matter what another calls you. You know in your heart you are not.
Isn't the belief in the unity of all things just as human as the belief in the division of all things?
Belief in the unity of all human beings. No, sir, don't believe. Why do you want to believe in the unity of all human beings? Huh? We are not unity. We are not united. That's a fact. Why do you want to believe in something which is non-factual? So that brings up the whole question of belief. You see, that's just it. You have your belief, and another has his belief. And we are fighting, killing each other for a belief. The communist has his belief, Stalin had his belief, and he destroyed millions. Now, in the same, why do you have any belief at all? You have belief because you are afraid. No? Do you believe that the sun rises? It's there to see it. You don't have to believe. So belief is a form of division. Therefore, belief is violence. So the mind, to be free of violence implies all this. Freedom from everything that man has put into another man. Belief, dogma, rituals, my country, your God and my God, my opinion, your opinion, my ideal, and all those are help to divide human beings and therefore breed violence. And though religions have said, organized religions have said, preached unity of mankind, each religion thinks it is far superior than the other. The Baptists against the, you know it all very well. Who said unity in of all things? Sir, there is a unity of all things only when you know what love is. When there is love in your heart, you will know it. Don't talk about unity. When you are destroying your neighbor, don't talk about unity.
But sir, you have spoken now of freedom. You have spoken of freedom from. Can you tell us about freedom to?
You have talked about freedom from. Will you say something about freedom to? Freedom from or freedom to is not freedom. Freedom is freedom, not from something towards something. Right?
Sir, I interpreted what you were talking about in unity, that those who preach unity are actually aiding the division.
Quite right, sir.
Thank you.
Is the actual understanding of this the level of seeing in effect the doing? Actually understand.
Yes, sir. Sir, look, when you see danger, you do, you act. If you see the danger of violence, see it, you then act. But you don't see the danger of violence because we are used to it, like belief. You say, yes, why shouldn't I believe? My opinion is as good as your opinion. So, any divisive, dividing element in human beings is productive of violence. If one realizes, understands that, and then one watches, belief, will, desire to fulfill, to become, you follow? All these breed violence, which doesn't mean at the end of it you live a vegetable kind of life. On the contrary, you live in a totally different dimension, which we'll talk about tomorrow when we talk about meditation.
Sir, you've established that elimination of violence will make it possible for everyone to be able to cope with the material existence much easier. In other words, to be able to completely eliminate the ego self. Well, that's all very fine, and it's very good, but are you saying that this is the purpose for human life? This is our purpose for living? Is just to be able to cope with the material existence?
Partly, sir, but also when you say, is this the purpose of living? Why do you want a purpose for living? Live. Living is its own purpose. Why do you want a purpose? See, again, look at it. Look, sir, what we have done. Each one has his own purpose, right? The religious man, his purpose. The scientist, his purpose. The family, its purpose, and so on. Divided. So life of a man who has a purpose is breeding violence because they divide. Oh, sir, it's all so clear and simple when you see the fact.
Sir, you've employed the tool of reason and logic up to this point, and probably throughout your entire lifetime, to answer the questions that have come up in your mind. Have you never reached a point to where you have found a definite limitation to reason and logic?
So I hope I'm not logical. Logic must go to a certain extent. One must think logically, sanely, healthily up to a point. Reason. But after that, beyond that, there's much more.
Then you're saying that there is such a thing as an intuitional life.
Wait a minute. Now, when you use the word intuition, that's a dangerous word. Intuition may be your own desire, your own wish, saying it, and you can say that's my intuition. What we are talking about is living a life in this world, not escaping from this world, a life of non-violence, a life, a really, truly religious life, not an intuitive life, a life in which there is no conflict, and a mind that's completely silent. Again, we'll go into that when we talk about meditation.
You said that life should be complete order, and that complete order is precise and mathematical.
life incomplete order to be logical, since mathematics is logical?
So, sir, when I said mathematical, I say in the sense, the highest form of mathematics is surely order.
May I ask,
Only in that sense. Yes, madam.
Last night you spoke of disorder, and when one realizes it's a disorder and he can learn, if he looks at disorder, and he can find order through that and learn the discipline and in a way become enlightened, because you're just being aware, you're not naming it, like when somebody calls you an ass and you become aware. But then why sometimes do people, even when they're endowed with this new freshness, all of a sudden there's a lack of carrying out the action, kind of falls back and becomes stagnant?
You are asking, are you, madam, why isn't one enlightened all the time? Isn't that it?
Well, it seems like it's a ladder and growing.
Why doesn't enlightenment last a long time? Why doesn't intelligence function all the time? Why does one occasionally become stupid? You see, at the end of this talk, you will go away being violent. What's the point of meeting together if this remains in your heart and in your mind? We spent an hour and a half trying to see what violence is and understanding it and really eliminating it, going beyond it. So it's 12:30. Don't think we better stop? Yes, sir. Just one more question, that'll be enough.
I would like to hear you express yourself. You said there you receive energy from violence. Isn't the selfless love of one brother to another the deadliest weapon in the world because of people's total inability to energize themselves from this? And can you not take the hate and energize that hate and return love?
I don't quite understand, sir.
I don't quite understand it myself. I'm trying to get my head in this place. Love, I'm convinced, is the deadliest weapon in the world. And when you're coping with a neighbor that's violent, can you not take that violence and use it as a source of energy to return love?
No, sir, I don't quite see this point. Look,
I don't know how to make it any clearer.
I'm your neighbor. You hate me, or I hate you. And you say to me, you are asking whether you cannot take my hate and turn that energy into love and respond to man who hates with love. Is that it?
When you return love, if the only way you can really, when I asked this question, I wanted your awareness on this, to be able to take violence and hatred and use that as a...
Why should I use it, sir?
To be able to cope with it.
Why? No, we dealt with that question just now when the gentleman asked, what shall I do if there is no violence in me when my neighbor is violent? To that we said, if you really have no sense of violence, then you will know what to do when your neighbor is violent. Don't determine now what you will do. Don't have a formula for a life which is not violent. If you have a formula, then that very formula is breeding violence. I think I better stop, sir, if you don't mind.